people who are following online. We are going to start the second day of our symposium. Yesterday, we were talking about synergies among research infrastructures, and also synergies with clusters of Pillar 2. Today, we are going to keep on talking about synergies, but with different approaches. Our first session is going to be session 3, and it's going to focus on synergies with other European programs and stakeholders. I ask, please, the speakers for session 3 to come up on stage. And well, in this session, we are going to have representatives from different initiatives like technology, infrastructures, NCP networks, the Joint Research Center, widening instruments. And the idea is to debate with these stakeholders about how can be aligned to create a more coherent ecosystem. Thank you.
So thank you. Seems okay. Do you hear me now? Okay. Okay. Very good. So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Marina, for the introduction. It is my pleasure today to be here with you to moderate this session, the third session on synergies with other programs and stakeholders. My name is Ian Gauchiborda, and I come from Scienza Malta. I used to be, until very recently, the NCP and Program Committee member for Research Infrastructures and also a member of the S3 project and of the S3 Forum and also of the RICH Forum. And I'm also a partner in the RICH Europe project. Today, we've lined up quite a rich lineup of speakers, and I'm very happy that all of you were able to make it today. This topic is quite an important topic close to my heart because, in my opinion, applying for a research infrastructure project is not like applying to any other Horizon Europe project. And at the heart of applying for such a project comes this connection need to the wider policy areas, like, for example, the European research area, etc. And the impact actually emerges when they are able to connect beyond their own ecosystems. Okay, so research infrastructures cannot work in a silo. And this panel today will look at highlighting practical models of synergies that could strengthen the excellence and the innovation inclusiveness of research infrastructures across Europe. So I will start with introducing the speakers we have today, the panelists. So I start with Ms. Gaëlle Decroix, who is the Deputy Director of Research Infrastructure, European and International Affairs at the CEA. She will present how the research infrastructures and technology infrastructures integrate into the European R&I landscape with experiences from the RETIFI project. So maybe, Gaëlle, you would like to take the floor? Yes?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So, okay, thank you. So I'm Gaëlle Decroix and I'm also a coordinator of the RETIFI project. It's a research infrastructure, technology infrastructure for impact. And my purpose is to give you some insight from our project. So I want to start with a definition because we speak about research infrastructure and technology infrastructures. I suppose you know very well what are the research infrastructure. They are well defined a long time ago. And now, when you look at the strategy for research infrastructure and technology infrastructure published by the European Commission on September 2025, you have also such definition about the technology infrastructures. In fact, the definition was also proposed in a previous staff working document from the European Commission on 2019. So what are the technology infrastructures? It's our facility, equipment, capability, and resources required to develop, test, upscale, and validate technology. So the primary purpose is to enable and accelerate technology innovation towards societal or market adoption, boosting industrial competitiveness. So it's quite different than the research infrastructures. The research infrastructure are more data producer, and the main purpose of the research infrastructure is also to pursue scientific excellence. It's not research infrastructure against technology infrastructures, but the idea is to demonstrate that the research and technology infrastructures form a continuum from scientific discovery to technology development and to industrial development. And they are integrated when they are integrated, we significantly accelerate the full innovation chain. And it's why integration of research infrastructures and technology infrastructure matters, in fact. So what we can see, there are complementary elements for efficient and functional research and innovation ecosystem in Europe. So the idea and the goal of this integration is strengthen the European competitiveness, as many strategic sectors depend on rapid technology maturation and scale up. But as you probably know, we see that yes, there are some challenges, fragmentation, lack of common frameworks, need for better collaboration between public and private actors. If we come back to the RITIFI, so the RITIFI is a coordination and support action. It was a project is finished now. It was finished end of last year, and it was the duration was 33 months, and it was a consortium of 14 partners, RI and TI stakeholders and research infrastructures, and across 10 countries, and they are directly connected to many network of RI and TI users. So we had a methodology. Our methodology was a pragmatic approach, combining desk research, case study from 5 pre-selected areas, surveys, workshop, and interview. And what we expected to deliver, it was delivering concrete policy, governance, and operational framework to make RI and TI collaboration systematic, sustainable, and also impactful. So what we learned from our project, we see some lessons from we had some lessons from a case study. What works, in fact, in practice. We have identified model of collaboration. It was between RI and TIs. So we have identified 3 models. One is a project-based formal consortium coming together to jointly support industry. We have also open-ended collaboration. That means either in consortia or bilateral to connect the research base with industry. And we have a third model. It's more collaboration where TI support or support RIs or vice versa, RIs support TIs without an explicit remit to support industry. We have also identified best practice, a joint service model and co-design with industry. Does it mean that enable faster access, improve relevance, and stronger market uptake? It was a case when we look at the clean hydrogen or circular material economy, one of the pre-selected areas. We have also identified the importance of long-term RI-TI partnership, particularly it's particularly effective in complex domain like superconductivity accelerator technology, one another pre-selected area, and where co-investment and in-kind collaboration models have proven highly efficient. We have also identified integrated access scheme to improve the user experience and reducing fragmentations across infrastructures. And also, as practice, capacity building and staff action are very important. It strengthens skills, trust, and also long-term sustainability. It's concerning we have also defined some model of a level of collaboration intensity between RI, TI, and industry. I just want to show you. Maybe I will not discuss a lot about this level of collaboration, but so you have four level. It's more and concerning according the type of collaboration between RI, TI, and industries. It's ad hoc, manage, coordinated, and synchronized. And we have some different dimension characterized by, per level. It's a level of connection, responsive, proactive approach, collaboration reasons, starting position, collaboration intent, and collaboration continually. So according the different dimension and the different level of collaboration, we have see a difference. But we have identified best practice, but we have also identified main structural barriers. And some barriers are very important to collaborate for the collaboration. So, for instance, as some of you have already mentioned yesterday, knowledge of needs in industry. Sometimes industries they don't know research and what TI and RI can provide, but also they don't know how to express their needs to the research and technology infrastructures. We have also identified complex and slow access procedures between, you have sometimes different access procedure from RI and TIs, and some discussion concerning the IP, and so also concerning the risk. And so it's limiting the industrial participation and responsiveness. We have also identified a lack of stable long-term funding models for RI and TI joint services. And also, because it's also important, we have a fragmented governance, and at EU level, as you probably know, we have an absence of EU level TI coordination framework. It's not directly connected to TI and RI interrogation, but it's a question of how TI are supported also at European, national, or regional level. It's important. And we have also a weak alignment between our EU, national, and regional investment planning. So what from the different, I put you some recommendation. We have identified, we write a white paper with a key recommendation. So to strengthen coherence, so I put you some key recommendation. We have one is a strengthen coherence RI and TI collaboration framework to support service integration for technology development and maturation. Does it mean it's a fun interoperability and collaboration pilot between RI and TI in selected areas, with the support of RETIFI businessman framework, support the role also of technology infrastructure in activating the continuum between the research infrastructure and the industry. We could establish a joint RI and TI events, training program, develop a common language, also an approach for user interface. Another recommendation is promote access for broader industry research collaboration. Does it mean deploy an European access framework for industrial user? Does it mean interactive mapping tool, for instance, coordination with a national and regional business support ecosystem? We could have also linked RTI access support to SME and industrial-oriented funded instruments. We could also encourage and incentivize more the possibility to subcontract research and technology infrastructure service in public funded instruments, targeting company RGI projects. And another recommendation is also anchor talent and capability in infrastructure platform. This recommendation is not directly linked to the RI and TI integration, but I want to mention it because it's also important that we could strengthen the position of TI as a core enabler of industry policy, aligned with the TRL continuum and supporting European strategic autonomy. And also we have also for TI to develop life cycle based funding from strategic dialogue and long-term planning. So as conclusion of my presentation, so when we say that when research and technology infrastructure are strictly connected, we see that Europe accelerates innovation, strengthen industry uptake, and build more resilient ecosystem. So the integration of RI and TI is not nice to do, but we have to be, it's a must for Europe innovation and competitiveness. And so to make this happen at scale, we need action from all sides, from RI, TI, industry, and also policymakers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gael. Indeed, it's quite important to have this kind of study looking at not only the research infrastructures, but also what is around the research infrastructures, and especially the industry, because this is what makes the research infrastructure, which helps the European research infrastructure be relevant in the entire ecosystem. So understanding the needs of the industry, and one point I took from your presentation was also this anchoring of talents, which is an important point for research infrastructures, is quite important. So thank you for sharing this. Next up, I will present Mr. Miguel Angel Garcia Aranda. He is a university professor at Malaga University, and he will give us examples on projects with research infrastructure participation, within Pillar 3, with particular focus on XCO2 project funded under the EIC Pathfinder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. My pleasure to be here. And just to tell you that this contribution is completely open, so we can share. And then if anyone is interested, just drop me an email to all the organization and we'll be shared with you. I would like always to start with an outline of these 8 minutes. That will be a very brief introduction and tell you what do we do and for what. And I will try to finish with a very quick acknowledgement. Why do we do what we do? Because cement, there are thousands, many thousands of people researching, because we contaminate a lot. And you may know that we pour in the planet 15 cubic kilometers. Let's say we are here center at the Biblioteca Nazionale de Italy. You can see that an edge of 2.4 kilometers north and east, and 2.3 kilometers or 2.4 kilometers high. This is the amount of concrete we put in the planet every single year in continuum. And because cement, which is 12% volume of concrete, is very highly contaminant, we contribute to about 8% of the CO2 emission. I don't know if you can imagine what is that, but if you add together planes, ships, and truck, no taxi, or public transport with no taxi, they all contaminate 6%. So cement is, if you compute cement like a country, it will be the third emitter after China and the States, more than all Japan or Germany together. This is a big issue, and we all understand the CO2 emission we have to decrease. You may not be aware of the very big second sustainability tsunami that we will face in some years, which is construction and demolition waste. Concrete is porous, and therefore there is a lifetime lifetime. And most buildings have about 100 years lifetime. If you have good maintenance, you may have 150. If you have poor maintenance, like a bridge that we unfortunately faced here in Italy some years ago, you may have less than 50 years lifetime. So we will have a huge sustainability tsunami of construction and demolition waste that we will not know what to do, because we will see more than 30 gigatons, 30,000 million tons every year of construction and demolition waste. But this will happen in about 40 to 60 years, so nobody cares. So people are now focused in the CO2 emission, and I will talk about CO2 emission decrease. Just a second introduction, who we are. In Malaga, we research and develop. We only focus on top right, low carbon cement or circular economy, just to tackle these two big issues. And we work in both Pillar 1, excellent side, because we have an advanced grant, but I will not talk about that today, with a very clear goal of mechanistic understanding of how can we improve low carbon cement, because there are many challenges, and also Marie Curie schemes with a postdoc. But now I will focus today very briefly in the Pillar 3, in the Innovative Europe through funding from the European Innovation Council, that you may be aware or not of the many funding schemes that we have. European Innovation Council have different funding schemes, and one is the Pathfinder Challenges, which are given a need, that I will comment on that in the next slide. They fund a portfolio, and the portfolio is a set of projects, normally 5 to 7 projects, usually 6 projects, that they try to find synergies altogether. And then, of course, there is a portfolio project. A single project is a consortium, which is an international consortium, and then within the consortium, we have whatever partner, in this case, Malaga. And we have this XCO2 project that I will introduce in the next slide, which is by far the most important slide of my presentation. So I will stay here for a couple of minutes, because here I will introduce a very specific challenge of the European Innovation Council, that in 2024, they dedicate about 23 million euros to fund the 6 projects that you can see on the left, within the Pathfinder Challenge towards cement and concrete as a carbon sink. Not only trying to decrease the CO2 emission, but can we place CO2 in the concrete in order to have ideally net zero concrete, or at least as low as possible? And in order to do that, they have funded the 6 projects that you have on the left, and I have no time to enter into the detail of the 6 projects. And of course, there are confidential issues that I will only very brief what is in Cordis. But maybe the first one in the mid top right, you have eco slag cement. We have a slag from the steel industry that for some reason we cannot use today in cement, but with some processes, there is this EcoCen company with another 6 partners that have presented this project to the European Innovation Council. They have been selected, and they will try to develop a cement or a fraction of a part of a constituent of a cement with a very low CO2 footprint. Or if you go mid-bottom, the zinc, which is Pebble, another company with many other partners that will develop cement, or they will try to innovate in order to develop cement with magnesium silicate. But the important I am here because on the bottom right of these 6 projects is XCO2. XCO2 has been selected by European Innovation Council as enabling technologies. The partners of this XCO2 are University of Malaga, that you have on the right, and University of Bath and Manchester, and also ESRF, which is the key enabling technology, because we can do good, accurate, unique analysis with technique that you may be aware or not, that I will introduce, analytical technique that I will introduce in the next slide, in order to advance and to make this innovation faster for the remaining 5 projects of this portfolio, plus our own goal. Bottom right, you have this kickoff portfolio meeting. We have kickoff meeting of every project of each of these 6 projects. And on top of that, at Brussels, we have a kickoff meeting of the whole portfolio where representatives of every single project of this portfolio get together to try to put forces together in order to make this innovation faster. Because when I hear innovation today and yesterday, it's okay, but if the innovation is not fast and you don't get the first or the very few first on the market, then you are in a very weak position. Because afterward, if there are other key players we have to take up a fraction of the market, it will be very difficult to displace. And this is why when I listen all these artificial intelligence approaches, it's okay if you find a niche, but to take the fraction of the cake that other big players are having there, it's going to be really difficult. And this is a busy slide, but this is what I would like to highlight, that what we do in XCO2 is enabling analytical technology, because through synchrotron, through research and infrastructure that mainly at the SRF, but in some cases for very special application, we go to ALBA synchrotron, Spari synchrotron, or to other synchrotron, is to provide these technologies in order to make this, to the innovation in this segment to be faster. And we have identified a few key development, like in C2 but I will not enter into that. And so case studies, so the important is to the left, the explanation to the right is only for those who are very interested, but at some point, we always say, we want to collaborate. But this is extremely difficult to collaborate to a degree that we make real innovation, because when we collaborate, we have to have time. We have to have time to understand and to play and to make an important contribution. And really, collaboration, if we do not have enough manpower and staff, is extremely difficult. But within this portfolio approach, we are able to find time not only to collaborate within a project with your partner, which is clearly established in a project, is relatively easy. But between different projects, to collaborate between different projects with a person month that does not count, that's really challenging, at least from my perspective. And of course, I will finish. I will very happy to receive questions afterward. I would like to thank the organizer. I would like to thank, of course, the funding bodies, in this case, mainly European Innovation Council. And of course, this is a team effort. I would like to thank all my collaboration. And with that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you for sharing this. Indeed, construction and demolition waste is a growing challenge, not only in Spain but all over Europe. I believe it's part of of the problem of advancement. So when you advance, it comes with some challenges. So thank you for sharing this. Next up, I will introduce Nicole Weiss from who is the national contact point for health in Switzerland since 2019, and she's also a member of the HNN project. She will present the role of the NCPs, which is quite important when it comes to understanding the wider landscape of research infrastructure. So, Nicole.
Thank you, Jan. Good morning. HNN3 stands for Health NCP Net and is the project by health NCPs for NCPs, but also external stakeholders. The project spans the whole lifetime of Horizon Europe, and our services are open until after Horizon Europe, until end of May 2029. And the project is coordinated by our colleagues from APRE here in Rome, and Giorgio is here in the room. Our mission is to find the best tools and strategies to finally support stakeholders participating in Horizon Europe, especially health-related topics. And we have services and tools for health NCPs, because we want to foster knowledge and harmonize the services we offer throughout Europe and beyond. And we also have services for applicants. And we are in regular contact with the European Commission and other health-related initiatives. And you see, this is a screenshot of our of the HNN3 website. And we reach out to partnerships and also health-related research infrastructures. But why should we do this? Because in the Cluster Health Work Program, research infrastructures are mentioned. And they are mentioned on the one hand to encourage applicants to look for health-related topics outside of cluster health in other programs, in other pillars, and also in the research infrastructure work program, where there is an InfraServe topic, for instance, for neuroscience researchers in connection with e-brains. And on the other hand, research infrastructures are also mentioned in different topics, either in general, that applicants are encouraged to make use of the services of research infrastructures. And sometimes the information is clearer, the scope is more detailed. There should be research infrastructures either in the health field or also climate environment field. And even more clearer, sometimes research infrastructures are mentioned, such as Elixir, Écrin, your bioimaging, for instance, are all mentioned so that applicants are more aware, because we see that it was discussed yesterday also, it's not always known what it means to interact with research infrastructures. And this is the reason why we reach out to first understand better what research infrastructures can offer in the health field for researchers, and then pass this on to applicants. And we reached out already in the frame of the project with Elixir, Écrin, Eurobioimaging, IATRIS, and BBMRI ERIC. We discussed about possible collaborations. For instance, HNN3 organized a webinar earlier this week about clinical studies, and Écrin presented their services there to applicants. And I call here for collaboration. We want to reach out to other research infrastructures relevant for health researchers. And if you're interested, you can contact us, but we will also reach out and look for possible collaborations so that we pass on the message to the applicants and foster collaboration. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nicole, for this, and indeed, this is an important year for health-related infrastructures, because, as you are aware, the InfraServe this year will focus specifically on e-brains. So the role of an NCP comes in very handy, especially when there is this need for collaboration between thematic research infrastructures, and we are seeing this phenomenon grow quite a bit, because even under the InfraDev cause of 2026, there are also these kind of collaborative measures to be taken by projects which will be implemented under the InfraDev. However, complementary to what Nicole has said, also you know that in the RICH Europe website there is a specific tool which allows also for looking up opportunities such as the transnational access, for example, which is quite important for the research community to make use of. So I just wanted to complement what you have said. So thank you, Nicole. Next up, I have Catherine Simoneau, if I say it correctly. She's from the Joint Research Center, and she will walk us through the connection between the research infrastructures and the JRC. As you know, the JRC runs quite a number of activities, and they also have their own transnational access. So I'm happy to hear more about this. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So the Joint Research Center, if you know us, perfect. If you don't know us, is part of the European Commission. It's actually a Directorate General, and its role is to do science for policy. So it means it's a large number of people on different geographical sites, each with their own competencies. But if you're looking for anything from nuclear to life science to macroeconomics to quantum technologies, you'll always find someone in a group in GRC that's working for that with a specific role, which means also for scrutiny and for purposes of advanced science for policy, we'd also have labs. We have 53 physical research infrastructures, 34 non-nuclear research infrastructures, and 19 nuclears. And of those, 39 are capable of opening to external users, so what we call open access and also training and capacity building. I'm not asking you to read all that, but basically, if you're interested, they're all in different geographical areas, but there is a catalog that you can find the details of all of them. For today, I will give you some example, more specifically maybe on the nanobiotech, because this is in the unit that I am leading, and it's nanobiotechnology, so it's a non-nuclear one on life science, but also it has large facilities and I'm not going to say long history, but it's going to be 10 years next year that we do open access. So it's also interesting. It's not our main job, but it's an important one for a number of reasons. What I think the benefit that there is to be a research infrastructure and part of the GRC strategy is that if we have limited resources in Europe, we have labs. They are quite nice, and we're paid by the European citizens, and therefore it's a duty for me. It's in our DNA to open it as much as possible to external users because of the limited resources. Also, because we do science for policy, we have in our DNA to always look, what's the regulatory landscape? What does it mean to use, if you do analytical chemistry? I have to look at the safety of workers. I have to look at the greening of experiments. So it's always a 360 constantly in our head. It's also a 360 of how do we facilitate access to market for innovation? So bridging the gap between science and industry. Disseminating knowledge is something really important. We do a lot of outreach, and doing training and capacity building is important. Of course, we have benefits also for ourselves. We always expand our networking capabilities. We're nudging ourselves into new areas of research. If we're working on detection of airborne pathogen for preparedness to health threats, well, if you're talking defense, then we can be also in defense and border security. So it's always thinking the next, always priorities of the Commission for Europe for the benefit of not only policymakers, but citizens. Excellence in science, it's very important for us. We like to publish, and raising our visibility is also important. Now, what we offer is something a bit, it's not particular, but it's multi-sectorial. Because when I say nanobiotechnologies, it can be nanotechnologies, nanomaterial technologies, biology. It really can have a different domains of application. So basically, we have three that define our unit. One is biology-based health product and technology. So we work on preparedness, medical device, in vitro diagnostics, mRNA vaccines, lipid nanoparticles, therapeutics. We also have a strong history in nanomaterials and advanced material, on novel food, on safe and sustainable by design for chemicals and materials, and on micro and nanoplastics for the part of detection, not the health effects, I would say. How we do this, we have facilities and a team. So it's a multidisciplinary instrumentation that ranges different domains: chemistry, biology, physics, material science. We have a clean room, and we have about 10 scientists that work in the lab. Something quite special is that you can have scientists that one morning are doing something on nanoplastics, the next morning they're working on mRNA therapies. That's pretty special, I think. We are a technology, not in the sense of the definition of DGRTD, but technology because of the clean room, because we like to work with projects and accompanying people. We have this tech platform and outreach. We are part of the RTD EU Research Infrastructure and Network, and I'm going to tell you a little more about what we do for open access and collaboration. So open access, it's academia, research, industry, SMEs. We've been working mostly in relevance-driven, but we have the first market-driven this year. The call has been issued and it's just closed, so we're going to start. It's interesting, it's a challenge. I mentioned project-based in a sense that when we have open access, we select projects for people and we talk to them before, during, after. So it's interesting because sometimes people will come for a training and capacity building. They will then apply to an open access. When they're with us, they will discover there is another technique that we have that could be applied, and sometimes it results in a patent. So it's very interesting what we can do in nudging ourselves and helping others. The training and capacity building, there are only two facilities. One is on seismic research and the other is our own nanobiotech. It's more for specific group and purposes. We have become more popular this year. From 14 proposals in 2024, we have now 62 proposals from 29 countries, resulting in 156 participants for this year. So we're going to have 2 sessions. And in that, I always want to give a benefit, and therefore we also have Eric that is invited to also give a presentation so we can also maximize the benefits of getting other networks being known. So I mentioned integration in the EU landscape. I mentioned Eric, but it's really, we're trying to do as much as we can overall, not just for the Nanobiotech Lab, but others. So it's really, we really want to demonstrate the relevance, the uniqueness, the complementarity of the research infrastructures. It's very, very important to GRC. Eric is very dear to my heart, I have to say, because of the complementarity of the thematics and the vision for opening up more in life science, maybe on food also. So that's something that we're really working on, but it's not the only one. You see the other one, the ICOS, the ELI. We also have participation in Horizon Europe. So it's a flexible participation in a sense. It can be observer, it can be on an advisory board, it can be a partnership, we can have a memorandum of understanding. So some examples are the NFFA, Fairy Tale, we're on the advisory board. Irina, Isidore, we were on it. We're going to be on the Be Ready. I was in the launch last week. Cost actions, if you're in there, we're going to be involved in Connect Networks or actions. And we are involved in Horizon Call when you see GRC being mentioned. That's one cue. If the GRC is not mentioned, it can be arranged afterwards also. The long history I mentioned, it's almost 10 years, so we had a number of calls, so we kind of get used to, we're very used to open access. We're now used to open access also in collaboration with NFFA since 2022, with Eric since 2023. So it's something that really we're working on mutual benefits. This is really something that for the GRC is the most important. We're not imposing anything, but if we see that there can be a benefit, we're going to offer, we're going to be there, and we're going to try to give as much as we can. We also have training and capacity building. We can have unpaid visiting scientists that can be also easy to organize for us. We're very open. And so we're really trying to connect the dots. We have contacts with the European Innovation Council on the Accelerator Program, the EIT, the Project of Common European Interest. We're evaluating the innovation criteria, the startup and scale-up agencies. Think about it, and we're going to try a point of entry as long as we can have an intervention logic and it will make sense. It means that we're also mapping things. We try to know who you are, if you're a research infrastructure, what you do, where we can connect, where we can engage. So we had done this mapping, you don't have to read all this, but we had done this mapping for the GRTD. What is there in life science? Well, we're going to look at it. But it's also helping us, because if we can connect for a good reason, then we will. In the research infrastructure and technology infrastructure strategy, we are mentioned in some specific contexts, like the mobilizing investments. So there is an initiative called the Flagship Research and Technology Infrastructure Strategy for the GRC, to have a continuum and an EU perspective for the next framework program. We're trying to attract growing talent in Europe, part of the Center of Excellence, to bolster the accessibility. So on several actions, I think there is action 13, action 14, on governance, with this being part of the coordination network for this ecosystem. And then we try to be involved also on the startup and scale up, on the access, so also transnational access, being at the crossroad where we can between research and technology, because for us it's really a continuum. And also test innovation with a unique advantage and edge for those that connect with us. And those would be working in co-creation of scientific knowledge, taking advantage of what we have in our DNA, which is the validation, the reference science, bringing the regulatory science, the standardization-oriented research for being able to deploy correctly on the EU market, working on multi-sector, multi-scale. If you're in the life science, we go from molecular to cellular to full systems, multi-sectors, because we can work on different application domains. We're trying also, we have developed the Safe and Sustainable by Design for the European Commission. So being there, we try also to help with the implementation. It can be a benefit for research infrastructures, and really connecting different thematics between health, for example, in our case, and much broader for the others, but for us, it'd be between health, advanced material, biotech, clean tech. And in terms of sustainable collaboration, so it's about partnerships, can be joint advisory, it can be looking at foresight mobility schemes. So we're really hoping that you can find an advantage on connecting with us. And I would like to thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for this. And indeed, the JRC is quite well positioned as it is to provide this kind of additional landscape to the traditional research infrastructures that we are used to. So a couple of years ago, under the RICH project, we organized mutual learning with the JRC. And I remember the comments that came after this mutual learning was that there is so much untapped potential that sometimes when you look at research infrastructures, you tend to look at the S3 roadmap and the S3 projects, and then you forget that there is also the JRC, which connects to the other research infrastructure. So thank you for sharing this presentation. Next up, and last but not least, Ornella, you've been waiting. You are the last, so I give the floor now to Oriella de Giacomo, who is from the RICH. She's the deputy director, and she will focus now on how research infrastructures can support capacity building, access, and training in widening countries. Thank you, Ornella.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so CERIC is one of the 32 ERICs, so nothing very special from this point of view. In the beginning, ERICs were some kind of strange animal. Now they are much more common, but there is a particular aspect of CERIC. 6 from our 8 members are widening countries. And if you know a little bit about ERICs, in this consortia, the members of the consortia are member states. So yeah, 6 from 8 are twinning, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Slovenia. And you see this in a dark blue. And the light blue points you see are what we call associated facilities. And in this case, you have heard already from JRC that they are one of our associated facilities. This is because the particular configuration of CERIC is to have one facility per country, and this is also unique to CERIC. And of course, this is good for some aspects, but it is also difficult to approach some challenges. For example, when we went into developing a strategy to serve better the community on energy research, or life sciences, we understood there were some gaps. And it's not possible to involve members so they bring one facility to the consortium, so we decided to cover these gaps with associated facilities. And that is how we ended up with this very fruitful collaboration with the JRC and others. Now, the goals of the ERIC, when the infrastructure was set up in the beginning, was, of course, to support excellent research. And how this is through competitive open access. We could have a whole workshop talking about the value of competitive open access, but this was the objective, the main objective, the core activity of the infrastructure. But not only that, we also wanted to contribute to innovation, so support knowledge production and technology transfer for innovation, to stimulate and support training and mobility, because this is another aspect where infrastructures are not so good, and especially when CERIC was set up, we're not so good into sharing, increasing the mobility of people. And we find a lot of advantages in doing so. And to, of course, speed up the alignment east-west. Again, we have a high component of members which are widening countries. And the fact that a country is widening does not mean that they don't have excellent research infrastructure. So these deserve to be part of an excellent network of European, pan-European relevance, and to have their visibility. And of course, we also have as an objective to apply for funding. And this is not as trivial as it may seem. It's not about the funding. It's about being part also of networks that involve the best players in Europe. So yes, on one hand, we want to align inside the consortium and share practices. We want circulation of people, but we also want to be connected with other people outside the consortium. So this is the reason behind this. So how do we achieve these goals, these objectives? The core of everything is the open access, the competitive. So again, the new thing of CERIC when it was set up was the possibility to apply to multiple infrastructures. From the point of view of the researcher, they do one application, and that's it. From our point of view, we manage all the backend, and we send the users then to the different infrastructures. So from their point of view, they are applying to one infrastructure, and then we manage the rest. This is the model. And we are open worldwide. So the access is not open only for the countries that are part of the consortium, it's really open worldwide. And here again, free of charge, there is a lot of theory behind why this is good. We bring the best researchers in the world, and they leave their knowledge with us. They develop instrumentation jointly. So we are gaining a lot from providing this free access. And of course, we always request that all results are published so that they are made available for the whole research community, not for us. Again, what we do. So I said, in addition to access, there are other things we do, like develop joint technology transfer and IP policies. And we offer also coordinated access to the infrastructures. And here it's the same model done for researchers. the companies set up a contract with us. It's just ERIC. And then in the background, we send samples to Romania, to Poland, to wherever we need to send them. So from the point of view of the company, they are having an agreement with one subject, which is us, and we manage the rest in the background. And this enabled us to get clients for some facilities that did not have the probably necessary visibility to attract large companies themselves. We also established priorities, and I mentioned before that at a certain point we understood that there was the Green Deal coming and there was a big push to invest in renewable technologies, in non-fuel energy. So we set up the strategies, and we believe that we can reach the critical mass to address these topics properly. And this would not be possible for the single infrastructures on their own. So being together, we can address challenges in an effective way because we have all the complementary techniques needed. We also have internal projects, and I thank the chair of ESFRI that yesterday mentioned also this particular aspect of CERIC when we coordinate internally. And the internal projects are one big player in this internal coordination. Through these internal projects, we propose some funding for activities which help always in the integration of the facilities. So the objective is always to have a better integration. And we found out also that with a small investment, sometimes we leverage investment from member states. So with a small push from our side, a small seed, we promote investments at the national level in these facilities. And then, of course, there is the application for external funding. And also here, again, the objective of this is to keep these facilities at the top of what they can offer. And again, we are the ERIC. We are not the single facilities. So it's easier then to have us as a beneficiary, and we bring along all our facilities. And here are some examples of the projects we have participated in. These are just a few. RICH Shuttle I wanted to mention in particular, also because we are discussing the circulation of talents and how important it is. And also, again, the chair of ESFRI yesterday mentioned the importance of having circulation also across sectors. And RICH Shuttle is specifically about that, circulation of talents across sectors. So we have 3 universities in widening countries, 2 companies, and research infrastructures. And we have already had these exchanges where people from universities, both researchers and not researchers, from widening countries spend some time, from 3 months to a year, in either companies or in a research infrastructure. And we have seen a lot of benefits. We are, of course, preparing all our reports to say how well it worked, but we have seen a lot of benefits in these exchanges. And also we have seen some unforeseen results in a way, because one of the partners is the University of Malta. And after having people from Malta coming to the research infrastructure because they wanted to manage their own infrastructure, we ended up discussing their membership in CERIC. So we are at the moment discussing this. We also had people from Poland, which is one of our members, but in this case, another university located in another city, spending some time in Romania. So again, we help this connection between the members of the consortium, and this was also unforeseen. It was not intentional, but it happened. And yeah, these are the main results from this project. We have also, the previous one, RICH Shuttle, was a Waidira. So that's the obvious place where you would expect widening countries. But I also wanted to show other examples. We have applied for the ERIC Forum. We are part of the ERIC Forum project, implementation project. And this one is very important because we are there together with the other ERICs, and we discuss topics which are of European interest and also shared between us. So concerns between ERICs, but also development of good practices. And this is something that we can transfer then to our infrastructures. For example, we are talking about the development of a European employment contract in the framework of this project. We have been discussing GDPR, how to be compliant with anything needed with GDPR, how we are adopting artificial intelligence tools now, and we are also sharing our policies in this sense. So it's a very good forum for exchange of best practices, and we transfer this to the facilities. In the Accelerate project, which was an infra dev, and this was mainly about us, the development of SERIC as an infrastructure, because this is an old project, but also here, we had Ukraine as a partner when nobody mentioned Ukraine. Nobody even remembered they were there. And also the Commission was surprised that we had Ukraine in 2017 as a partner. And also in this case, one result of the project is that we ended up discussing the membership of Ukraine in the RICH. This was difficult because they were not part of Europe, so they needed to adopt the RICH regulation, but this was one important result, and now we are resuming the conversation in this sense. And also in this project, we had outreach to the Balkans, so we managed to bring, this is for our non-widening partners, to bring many users from the Balkans to our infrastructure. So also reaching a community that was a little bit left forgotten. And the last two, these are to infra tech. And here is again, because we want these excellent facilities, which are in widening countries, but are excellent, to be at the top and to be able to collaborate with the best partners in Europe. So we are also in these two projects, Impress and Act Next, one developing an interoperable platform for microscopy, and the other is developing advanced characterization for power to X, so non-fuel energy again. And the participation in these two projects was mainly thanks to the fact that we are an RICH and we have this critical mass, and we have the possibility to participate where our single facilities would not probably have been eligible or visible enough to make it. So yeah, that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ornella, for this. I'm very happy that Ornella is on the panel too today, because I think this RICH is a perfect example on how research infrastructures should be an inspiration to widening countries. So we all know that myself, coming from a widening country, we tend to be a little bit afraid when we refer to a research infrastructures. For us, it might seem too big to be part of it, but the RICH, I think, is a perfect example on how widening countries can really make an impact through research infrastructures. And I'm really happy you also mentioned the ERA shuttle, which I'm also I was also involved in the proposal stage when I was the NCP for widening. So I know this project very well, and I'm very happy to see that now they are finally integrating with the research infrastructure. So thank you for sharing this. Now we are at the end of the presentations, but I would like to now open the floor to the audience to see if there are any questions you would like to ask any of the panelists. Yes, I see a question here. I'm not sure the microphone.
Thank you. Well, my question is also a bit of a concern about a philosophy that seems to be going on in Europe about the research infrastructures and technological infrastructures. First of all, there is the concept or the conception that there is a continuum between basic science and innovation, but that doesn't exist. And it's not going to exist. Of course, research infrastructures are useful for industry, but we can see that a lot of industry is not, at least the big industry, of course, it's not accessing the research infrastructures, and that's because they don't find what they need there. They have the capacity to do it. And the technological infrastructures really, they don't receive the researcher, the normal researcher, because they should be, or at least in my view, at least that's unless it's my wrong conception, what really they are involved is with upscaling, basically putting products into the market. That's not a concern of the basic of the research infrastructures normally. And I feel that this is not going to benefit this kind of mixing. I'm not saying that it's not, that there is no overlap. There is some overlap, but to try to put everything together and then kind of try to bring or to make it a one infrastructure, it's a bit of perhaps a wrong way to do it. And what I feel is that then we have already scarce resources, so difficult getting money, etc. And in fact, we are creating an even bigger problem. And this all stems from this idea that it's a continuum. It's not a continuum. There are specificities, objectives are different. And so, I'm saying this not only because I'm listening this here, because at the moment there is a kind of a storm going on in Portugal, where suddenly the ministry decided to eliminate our basic science funding agency to create a new agency where both basic science and innovation are together based on this kind of idea, which it's not in the books. That's not the practice. Even in the EU, we have European Research Council, one thing, programs for applied research, public for European strategies. It's another thing that we have been talking about, pillars, etc. It's another issue. So I think that there has to be, I would like to see what's the data. Where are the good examples that this actually works? And I don't think there are. Of course, there may be some exceptions, but in particular fields, perhaps engineering and so on, perhaps, but I'm not familiar with those. So for me, it's a concern. I haven't seen the white paper, so I cannot comment on it apart from what I just saw. But I would like to, that people think about these issues before we start kind of moving in a direction where basic science will be jeopardized. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And well, this kind of interplay between terms that we attach to certain research infrastructures is not really a new one, because this has been there for a long time. I see it from my perspective as a way to kind of structure a little bit more the landscape that we have. The landscape is becoming, as you have seen in some of the slides, and even yesterday, you might have seen this complex landscape where you have research infrastructures undertaking basic research, but then you have others which are more I would like to say in the higher TRL, maybe, in the higher TRL tier. And that is where I think that this precision was needed. And that is where like the term for technology infrastructures then came up. I don't know if any of the other panelists would like to complement what I've just said, but maybe.
Yeah, I see. I think it was one of my slides too. So I would like to clarify that for us, we by the strict definition, we're not a research infrastructure because we don't do fundamental research. So we're nowhere. I mean, we do research with a purpose, and sometimes the lab that we do after 5 years, they say, well, you're not going to do this anymore. The priorities are somewhere else. So I apologize if I created inadvertently a confusion of talking about a continuum. I didn't mean that there was necessarily a continuum between a fundamental research infrastructure and technology infrastructure. In our case, we are, as GRC, Science for Policy, and science always towards standardization. There is a continuum in what we do because we are working with OECD, we're working with EDQM for medicines, we're working with ISO. So it might be a particular case. It didn't mean to imply that a research infrastructure doing more fundamental research should have any confusion with a technology infrastructure, just to clarify.
Sorry, if I can add something, because probably I have a good example where it works. And I understand the continuum not as the research infrastructure becoming a technology infrastructure, but as connecting very well. And we have the example of energy and fuel cells in particular, where we go from the basic research, so how the membranes work, how the catalyzer degrades, everything you can imagine from the basic understanding of the physics of the problem to the testing stations. And when people go to the testing stations, they understand something is not working, and they need to go back to research, to fundamental research. What is not working and how do we improve it? And in our case, the fact that we have this continuum, in this case, from the basic research to the testing stations, made it possible to have this dialogue. And in our case, it worked. So this is one example. It doesn't mean that this is applicable all across the board. Doesn't mean that this is the model for everything, but there are specific cases where having the availability of, let's say, the basic research and the prototyping all in one single infrastructure helps in this going back and forth.
Yeah, I think that Jose Luis want to contribute.
If you can give the microphone to Jose Luis, please.
I think it's a very interesting debate and things to discuss. And I would like to, my approach for to answer a little to you and contribute to the discussion is, let's go to a counterfact in the sense that this is very much used in social science. I mean, the other alternative will be that research infrastructure create a silo for his own work and his own financial support, and the technology infrastructure, another one. And I think this approach of very different silos is not very efficient, because at the end of the day, the silos will contribute mostly that the lobbies for the different groups will contribute to the national funding or the European funding, and well, they will compete the lobbies in order to keep his silo with the maximum budget they could really rise from that. This is one part. The second part is I started yesterday to have a very naive approach, but I think really research infrastructure, there are many different ones, and they are really centered like Gaussian around different level of TRL, maybe 1, 2, or 3, but nevertheless there are tails who goes really to the other side. And for instance, we have the example on the CERN. CERN is really developing technologies, uses mostly in the beginning for the accelerator, detectors, magnets, and things like that, that later on are really transferred to a completely different application. And we know perfectly all the detectors today for many of the techniques used in medicine in order to really have imaging of different diseases, mostly related to cancer, things like that, are really detectors develop from positron annihilation, things like that, detectors really develop in the beginning for research. So the aim of this kind of continuity, this kind of Gaussian of the different research infrastructure and technology infrastructure center at different level of the TRR, but at the end of the day, you have a continuous, in that sense, the same ecosystem continuously transferring from TRL 1, 2 to TRL 7, 8, really to achieve the industries. And of course, the aim will be that also the technology infrastructure will have the possibility to some, let's say, users but from the very basic TRL. So I'm thinking, just imagine, some of the facilities, for instance, related with semiconductors, who are really at the end of the TRL and thinking, I know some of them in Grenoble related with the CUA, they have also very basic research users. So this is the aim that we like to see, because I really think that to be integrated together and to be in the same package with a continuing ecosystem will be more beneficial and more efficient than to have different silos. Everyone only just could compete in order to keep his silo for themselves. But of course, I recognize totally that this depends, and I mean, it's not sure that that will be the best approach. It's certainly open for discussion and for have better, let's say, ideas. Sorry.
Thank you, Jose Manuel, for complimenting that, and not to scare anyone, but
I don't want to go into dialogue, but I just want to clarify one thing. I was not defending silos. I was just what I said was we don't want to have just like this merge technological to research infrastructure. That's what I said. And in fact, this was because of the RIFIFI white paper. That's my reaction, and because that was stated. That was what was stated, and it's not about good examples here. I would like to see the basis for this, but it's not about creating silos, because we already do that you are saying. But what I'm worried is that suddenly a directive comes that everything is going to merge, and that's not necessarily applicable to everything. I think we have to have the capacity to have good research infrastructures, and also sometimes just good technological infrastructure. CERN is a one-spot place, and they don't do industrial. I mean, they do basic stuff that will be sometimes turned into a product, not necessarily that they are the industrial spot where these things are applied. I mean, of course, they have some technological infrastructures.
Yeah, I think probably I misinterpret, but we don't speak about merging between RI and TI, research infrastructure and technology infrastructures. So the idea was, as explained by Jose and others, the idea is to have a continuum. So a continuum, as we explained, for the different phase of development, from basic research to innovations. And the idea, and what I have put in my presentation, it's about integration. I mean, it's not to have only RI and TI, but the purpose was to explain how we could be more, how RI and TI can more better collaborate when it's necessary, in fact, and what we have identified as best practice. But the idea was not to merge RI and TIs, but you have also, because you have also a gray zone between, you have, as explained, you have research infrastructures, they are involved. In fact, they had industrial users, and they contribute to the technology upscaling. Sorry, and you have also not so few, but some technology infrastructures, they could answer to basic research. So.
Thank you, Gael. No, you're fine. Okay, anyone else? So maybe any more questions from the audience? Anyone has anything to add? If not, I would like to now ask a general question to all the panelists, and I would like them to come in here with based on their experience on what are the key enabling factors that made collaboration between research infrastructures and other instruments, such as, for example, Pillar 3 technology infrastructures widening in your case, maybe other instruments, maybe other programs, and how do you use these instruments to make them really more impactful rather than being complementary to your work? So when we have projects being funded, or maybe when we have initiatives, when we are designing them, the main point we want to bring out of them is this impact. So I would like to invite you to kind of give your own experience on how this impact was created in your different areas.
If I can start, I will be very brief because at the end, what we look for is uniqueness. At some point, there is a variety of research or development that we can carry out, but at some point, we have to find the uniqueness based on techniques, experience. Sometimes the technique, the uniqueness is the knowledge of people in given research or technical infrastructure that they are able to connect between the need and the output which is required. So we, at least in Malaga, with many colleagues, that we always identify the uniqueness, and to me, this will be the key word.
Okay, I can go. In our case, as stated before, for us, the value is, again, bridging this alignment between East-West. So in our case, we see a very good opportunity to use projects both to twin some partners in the widening countries, but also to make them equal players with the rest of Europe. So this is why we also participate in other kinds of calls, not just widening. Of course, widening gives us the possibility to do capacity building and also to improve the infrastructure, but in the end, the point is how these excellent infrastructures get visibility and get better connected with the rest of Europe. So this is what we see as an advantage in the rest of the calls outside widening.
Thank you, Ornella. Gael?
Yeah, I think if we have a clear, for instance, if we have a clear positioning of RI and TIs, and also the positioning the collaboration of TI and RI. So I think it's important because we need to, what is important is to increase the recognition of RI, TIs, and also the collaboration between both. Because the idea is to connect. It could be it's connecting research and fundamental research to technology developments. And so RI, TIs are not only providers, but they are also ecosystem builder. And I think it's important also to recognize them as an ecosystem builder to have more impact.
Thank you, Gael. Catherine, would like to?
Yes, I'll go ahead. For us, it's number one, for it to increase the impact of different instruments, between different instruments, and with us, it's maximizing the synergies. I think we can play a role in orchestrating synergies and between networks of networks, integrating the science. It's not only about life science or nuclear science, but you need to have maybe some socioeconomics in the mix, so we can bring that to maximize the impact. Integration, so it's connecting across and anchoring into EU policies, the current ones and the next one. It's very important, and we like to do that when we are in a project, whether it's a research infrastructure project or Horizon Europe project, or the next one's the FP10. It's really about paving the way to anchor into the future EU policies, to anchor into being a catalyst to foresee what are going to be the regulatory landscapes. And I'm putting an S at landscapes, not just one, but also between sectors that maybe people don't always know about, and also on the standardization front, because in the end you want to be able to deploy something. So this is where I see our impact contribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Catherine. I don't know if there are maybe any more comments or questions to be asked. But we are really close to the end of the session. Before wrapping up, I just want to I would like each of the panelists to give the audience a bit of a key home message from this session. Maybe we can start with Angel first. Yes, Miguel, sorry.
In my case, the take-home message would be the need of not only to find the collaboration and synergy, which has been stressed already, which is absolutely clear, but within this time-constrained environment, it's very difficult. How do we allocate manpower, human resources? So for me, a challenge that we need to address at the policy maker scene is how do we consider this collaboration between, not within a project, that can be, but within a set of projects. And in this case, to me, we have to evolve because there is a challenge. How do we collaborate if we do not have this time to collaborate, or most of the people have not real time to collaborate? And to me, we have to evolve to a more flexible way where we can allocate, in this case with European project person month, and afterward to have a very tough and accountability, and they maybe even a rate with the project, the output, and then based on this rate, people could ask project or not. But my take-home message is that we have to foster collaboration, not only within a project, but between projects. And in order to do that, that's extremely difficult because we do not have person month to collaborate with whatever new technology or new challenge that we appears. And therefore, flexibility is required. And I know that flexibility is dangerous. So I leave it here because it's complicated what I am addressing. But at some point, we need flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Gael?
Yeah, concerning this session, I think to maximize Europe's research and innovation impact, I think we have to shift from collaboration between RICH, EI, and also other Horizon Europe instruments. We must shift this from a project-based approach to a more structured and govern ecosystem-driven model, in fact.
Thank you, Gael. Nicole?
I would also say foster collaboration and think outside of silos, take advantage in projects of research infrastructures, the JRC. I'm speaking now more for collaborative projects to achieve more together than we would be able alone.
Thank you, Nicole. Ornella?
Yes, probably much the same. So synergies. Again, I know this continuum may be worrying. It doesn't mean that we need to kill fundamental research. It just means we need to work better together. And the one aspect I forgot to mention when we go from general research to application to then testing prototypes is the regulatory aspect that we have also seen collaborating with the JRC. We also introduce that part to our research. So our researchers that go and test the stacks through the collaboration with the JRC, in patent they understand if whatever they are developing will be aligned with the regulatory frameworks. So yeah, synergies, trying to explore, and I wouldn't be afraid of the continuum. This is the way to work together. Doesn't mean that we need to transform. We just need to increase the dialogue between the different parts.
I cannot agree more, of course. Yeah, again, yeah, same thing. Partnerships, also longer term partnerships. It's not about a project or a source of funding. What's really difficult is the gap between. Very often, what we see is between the gap between, and I'm not talking necessarily only for research infrastructure, but between an RTD project, an RAI project, and then the gap until it becomes something else. That gap has a void, and we need to work on that void by other means. So sometimes it's simply also nurturing what is built in an initiative, in a project, towards a longer term. And so partnerships, nurturing the synergies, nurturing the 360 views. There is no fear, but learning from someone else that has done something in a completely different field can help give you an edge on, like, oh, it's been done like this. Can it work for what we want to develop? So the 360 view is always very interesting. So not being afraid and being collective.
Thank you, Catherine. And being the last key home message, it's not always easy to be the last one, but I really like this 360 view, because in my view, first of all, I am very happy to be a European, being able to make use of the European programs. The landscape has become so varied that nowadays you can have funding really for everything. And my advice would be that if you are a research infrastructure, if you are an aspiring research infrastructure, whether established or not, look at 360 degrees, because there is so much around us, and the potential can only be fully tapped if we are able to fully tap all the opportunities we have around us. And I think this would be my final key home message today. I thank you for your participation. I thank all the panelists for the rich presentations that you have given, and thank you. And I wish you the rest of a successful event. Thank you.
Now we are going to move on the last thematic corner of today. Session 4 is going to be focused on synergies between RI funding instruments. Please, speakers from session 4, come up on the stage. And well, in this session, we are going to talk about sustainability, because even the strongest collaboration models need stable and strategic fundings. And in this session, the speakers are going to share with us some of their financing strategies, including complementary funding mechanism and approaches that can enhance the long-term sustainability of research infrastructures. Thank you.
Yes, green. Yes, can you hear me now? Hello, we are still missing one speaker, Christian Mainsmouth from the Digital Europe program. Yes. Okay, we will check. Whether he has arrived. But we can start, right? Okay. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to the last but not least session of the symposium on synergies between research infrastructure funding instruments. My name is Aiga Jonele, and I'm the NCP coordinator for Research Council of Lithuania. and it is my absolute pleasure to moderate this last discussion of this symposium. The objective of this panel discussion is to show RI experiences with a mix of funding sources and share the best practices among RIs. As you all know, over the course of this symposium, we have already heard strong examples of cooperation among research infrastructures. Their interaction with the Horizon Europe clusters, their collaboration with other EU initiatives and stakeholders. And what becomes clear is that the strategic importance of research infrastructure is no longer a question. The real challenge now lies in how to ensure coherent and sustainable support across the full life cycle. And this brings us directly to today's focus, the synergies between different funding instruments. It has been a hot topic for a while, at least in a Horizon Europe environment. And synergies is indeed one of the most complex but also most critical aspects to the long-term success. And the key question for this session is therefore not whether synergies are desirable. No, the key question is how they can be made to work in practice. And I'm honored to present an excellent panel for today's discussion. And next to me is Dr. Elena Hoffert, Vice Chair of ESRI. Then we have Monique Bossi, Director of Technology at the National Institute of Physics and Infrastructure Manager of the Einstein Telescope Infrastructure Consortium. Roman Hvezda from LI ERIC, Director of the LI Beamlines Facility. Professor Kamen Kozarev, representing LOFAR ERIC, Bulgarian LOFAR Station. And we are looking forward to be joined by Christian Meinsma from Netherlands Enterprise Agency and Digital Euro Program Community. He has not arrived yet, and we'll see what's going on next. You know what they say: good things happen to those who wait. Our panel today altogether they bring perspectives spanning strategic policy, large-scale RI implementation, national roadmaps, and cross-program coordination, hopefully, if the last panelist arrives. But with this, let us begin with the strategic framing from ESFRI. And for the first presentation, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Elena Hoffert, Vice Chair of ESFRI and Research Infrastructures Advisor at the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Space. And Elena is closely involved in the ESFRI roadmap process and Horizon Europe program committee work. And today she will present the main conclusions of the ESFRI report on funding of research infrastructures. With no further ado, Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to present the results of our ESFRI work, internal work, which we conducted several years ago. Actually, during 2 years, we published the report in 2025. But to start, I would like to remind to everyone, because I like to start with the basics so that everybody would be well informed. What is ESFRI about, what we are doing, and why we are asking ourselves all these questions. So ESFRI was established in 2002, and with the mandate to bring together the strategic planning and investment decisions of member states and the European Union to put in place the European strategy on research infrastructures. So we started with the adoption of the first roadmap in 2006. Since then, we have adopted several roadmaps. The last roadmap was published in 2021, which comprises 63 research infrastructures and has mobilized over 24 billion euros in national and regional investments. And now we are conducting an update of the roadmap, which will be published in the end of this year. So this is the forum of member states and associated countries who are discussing together the questions and important issues, all issues related to research infrastructures. And as you can imagine, as it was said in the introduction, funding is really an issue. Now with 63 research infrastructures on the roadmap, we have come to the point where we need really to see how we assure the sustainability of all this system. But this issue is not new. Already in 2016, Competitiveness Council invited the European Commission and member states within ESFRI to prepare a targeted action plan to ensure long-term sustainability of research infrastructures. ESFRI published a long-term sustainability script in 2017, where we emphasized the need to establish adequate framework conditions for effective governance and long-term funding for research infrastructures at every stage of their life cycle. And then in 2020, ESFRI also published a white paper which calls to support initiatives facilitating the combination of national and European funds and synergies between different European fundings for research infrastructures. And so finally, in Council conclusions in December 2022, member states were invited together with the European Commission to perform an analysis of different types of financial support available for research infrastructures in Europe through the whole life cycle. And we were asked to identify good practices and synergies of various research funding sources, and mandated by the Council to propose appropriate research infrastructures funding models and corresponding funding initiatives. So as you see, it was the question was seized at a very high level. We did our best to make a response. So the report was published, as I said, by ESFRI in 2025. You can find it on our website. You see here the coordinates. Before publishing the report, we made a broad consultation of member states, associated countries, also research infrastructures, also stakeholders. So we conducted it during 2023 to 24. We identified different various funding practices which exist at national and European levels, multi-level funding synergies. We also identified the bottlenecks, and we can see that actually in each country, the individual research infrastructures funding is really complex and individual and not always absolutely easy to understand. And a lot of funding instruments are involved in this. And we also tried to provide broad insights in our report in the scientific and funding needs of research infrastructures, where we also tried to identify the opportunities for dedicated additional financial support at the European level. So this is, in a nutshell, a synthetic view of the recommendations. Actually, the main recommendations are here. We made 3 pillars of recommendations for research infrastructures, for member states, and then for funders at all the levels. Actually, all these 3 pillars have to contribute to the sustainability of funding of research infrastructures, because what we detected is that even research infrastructures have to develop a better understanding and a better overview of national and European funding sources which are available in their research infrastructures. In particular, it concerns distributed research infrastructures, because it is not always evident to know how all the national nodes are functioning in big distributed research infrastructures. Actually, for single-sited, it's probably, I would not say easier, but it's more straightforward, probably. We invite also the research infrastructures to establish a clear methodology for calculating research infrastructures costs for all stages of the life cycle of the research infrastructure. Like this, they will understand themselves all the needs at each stage and would be better armed actually to discuss their needs and their plans and future strategies with the decision makers and with the funders. For member states then, we invite member states to increase coherence of national funding strategies with national roadmaps or other equivalent strategic documents which exist at national levels. This would enhance certainly the complementarity between national and European research priorities and would help the sustainability of research infrastructures as really important pillars in the whole research ecosystem. And we also acknowledge that actually this diversity of funding which exists in different countries is really brings really a good added value to the whole system because it reinforces the resilience of the whole funding system, actually. We just need to see the complementarity of these funding sources. This is the point. And in particular cases, funding monitoring instruments can be also useful at the national level in order to better frame the whole existing funding models and funding strategies. Then, concerning the funders at all levels, what is important is actually the commitment to long-term engagement and planning for the sustainability of European research infrastructures. Not only for the new ones, but also for the landmarks, also for the upgrades, also for maintaining the level of research infrastructures, because we should think about research infrastructures as, you know, big like ocean liners. We spend a lot of time on constructing it and a lot of engagement and funding on constructing. Then we also have to think about the years which we use it and the years where we have to sustain it and we have to keep the necessary level of these research infrastructures. And then at a certain point, we also have to think about the dismantling of this research infrastructure. This is also a very important point, which is not always considered from the very beginning, but it is important to think about it, particularly for really very big research infrastructures, which need a lot of construction costs, actually. Then what is important is the synergies among different funding sources at regional, national, European levels, so that all these funding sources should be comprehensive and perceivable. Because we know that the funding sources exist, but they are not always seen and not always understandable and not always evident for different actors actually of the system. We also invite to foster the community development by encouraging funding models for cooperation between research infrastructures and for alignment with European missions. We think that it is important to support the curiosity-driven research and support the access to research infrastructures, which is actually completely in line with what was said yesterday, for example, in the previous sessions of this symposium. And we really gave this advice also in our position papers. It is important to reinforce the European support in connection to the European challenges, like greening, energy, digital transition, emergency cases. This is something which is very important. We have to support the extent, the upgrade of or linkages of different existing research infrastructures, which would lead to the upscaling of these research infrastructures and not necessarily to the creation of new ones. And this effort costs additional money for research infrastructure. So when we are speaking about the European endeavors, European objects, European research infrastructures, we need to think about also the European support, because these are our common challenges. These are our common needs. So probably it's not only the matter of each member state, but a common matter where maybe European funding should be better mobilized. And then European funding support should be maybe better mobilized also to public missions and services of European research infrastructures, which go beyond access to research infrastructures. And here we can speak about mobilizing of funding sources in different DGs, not only in DG RTD, because actually research infrastructures, as we understand, they are important for different players in the system. They are important not only to research, but we have also public services which use it, the data, which use the data for decision making, the data for different national policies. So this should be also valorized in research infrastructures, and maybe other funding sources can be also mobilized for these objectives. And the last point is certainly the human resources. Targeted funding mechanisms at European and national levels should be dedicated for the recruitment and training of skilled staff across Europe to keep and to retain the skilled resources within research infrastructures. And I think with this I have finished. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elena, for setting the strategic scene. And before we continue, do we have any news about the Digital Europe speaker? Okay, that gives us a bit extra time because since we are one speaker short. And Elena, if you don't mind, the report, the ESPRI report and the funding is a worthwhile discussion object itself. So maybe we can allow some audience question at this point, because your presentation was very highly interesting for our ecosystem. If there are questions, could you please? Yes. Just a second. There should be a mic on the way.
So, as an institution located in one of the in a region with structural funds, I wanted to ask if this can be employed. And sometimes in the past, with the discussion with the region, they say that on collaborative projects they have difficulties to give support when the projects are well evaluated but not funded. Since I was asking for this. And if there is something that can be done at European level in order to facilitate this case, since maybe some cases, for example, now we have a project which is in the reserve list of the last infra dev call, and we hope that at least we can have some support from the region.
Yes, thank you. Well, this is one of the points which we detected while preparing our report. These funds are available theoretically. They are not always visible. They are not always evident. Then there are some special rules, as far as I understand. And this is more not a question to me, but to the European Commission, probably, because the rules are set up by the European Commission. But what we also try to defend in the report is exactly that we need this kind of funding. Also we need to make it more visible and more available to research infrastructures, because it exists, and I think we will even probably in this panel have some examples of using of regional funds even for the construction of research infrastructures. So but it's not on as far as I understand, it's not on a large scale, but that was one of the ideas which we gave to the European Commission.
Okay, and one more question. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Roberto Trasarti from SOB Data Research Infrastructure. Actually, I was thinking about the fact that sometimes it's very difficult to let's say, have a strong relation or let's say a connection with ministries or government or the various countries in order to become, let's say, part of the roadmap of a specific country, which is sometimes essential to reach some kind of funding system and etc. There are the S3 delegates around the various countries, but since there are many kind of research infrastructures, sometimes for each country has a different department or a different person to connect, and sometimes it's very difficult to, let's say, manage, let's say, this kind of relation. So which suggestion you can give to get a better network, let's say?
Well, let's say not all the research infrastructures are supposed to be European research infrastructures on the S3 roadmap, first of all, because I think it's absolutely not necessary. It's absolutely not logical, because we have different layers. We have this European research infrastructures on S3 roadmap, which have this maybe the critical mass of which is necessary to be at this European level, which is these research infrastructures are accessible on competitive basis, on excellence basis. Not all the projects are accepted by these research infrastructures, because the research infrastructures, they have also their limited capacities, even if we are trying to do our best to accept as many users as we can. But you can imagine that the competitivity for access to these research infrastructures is also very high. So this is one point. Then we also need the research infrastructures at the national level, which can also provide training for the users, so that later on they could access the European research infrastructures, for example. We also need these trainings, maybe even at an earlier stage, for students or for PhD people, students. And all this can be done only by national research infrastructures. But I mean, it's not only one of the missions. The other missions are also research development and so on. But you see, the whole system is relatively complex and complementary, and it is important to have this complementarity. Concerning the national systems and national roadmaps, this is another question, because again, we have now 27 member states. We have also associated countries. They are all members of the S3 roadmap, but they all have their different systems. And I think there is no one recipe which would be good for all the countries. Well, the only advice is, yes, you have to try to find contacts with the decision makers in your countries, and but it starts by your research organizations, actually, because research infrastructures, they are normally attached to some research organizations or universities or research centers. And actually, as soon as this research center, research organization, or the university invests into your research infrastructure, so it means already that it is strategically important. So it means already that a lot of money is invested on the national level. It's not only money which you can see by constructing buildings, but it's also people who are working in the research infrastructure. So it shows already an engagement. Maybe then you need to make this engagement more evident. Maybe this is another question. So I would say start with your research organization. See with your research organization what are the needs, what you would like to do, and how you would like to establish a dialogue with your decision makers and funders to maybe to improve something in your surrounding. So you see, it's very individual from one to another situation, from one country to another. But yes, we just can assure you that as soon as the research infrastructure exists, it shows already a big engagement from your funders.
Thank you, Elena. Professor Kozarev, you wanted to jump in on this, right?
Yes, thank you. One one more related question. In your report, have you considered upgrades to RIs? I mean, if they're very important research infrastructures, at some point, in order to remain at the cutting edge, they might need an upgrade. So, do you have any recommendations how this should be approached?
Yes, I think it was on one of the slides. By the way, so I don't know how I can move backwards. Well, anyway, it was on the slides. It is in the report, and it is really very, very important when we say that the funders should engage for a long term, for each stage of life cycle of research infrastructure. It means not only the beginning with the preparatory phase, where you have this European funding from the Commission and everybody is happy, but it also means that the funders, decision makers have to think about the engagement for the operations, for the upgrades, for the maintenance of these research infrastructures, which is really a big engagement and a very important engagement in the life of the whole system.
Thank you, Elena, for answering the questions. And as I said at the beginning, synergies of funding instruments is indeed a hot topic in this environment. And discussion starting among panelists is an excellent proof of that. But let's move from policy framework to implementation in practice. And I'm very pleased to invite Monique Bossi, Director of Technology at the National Institute of Nuclear Physics and Infrastructure Manager of the Einstein Telescope Infrastructure Consortium. And with nearly 2 decades of experience in research infrastructures and European program work, she will share the ET experience in combining funding instruments and also experience coming, because it's still at the beginning of the road, right? So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I used to be, together with my colleague Daniela, the coordinator of this network in the previous frame program, so I'm really thankful for your invitation here and hopefully to contribute to this discussion. I just need 18 seconds of your attention. Gravitational waves. I spoiled it, sorry.
We have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
We can hear gravitational waves. We can hear the universe.
Yeah, I wanted to start with this. It was the official announcement after the first detection of the gravitational waves back in 2016, because I think it's important also to remember the fundamental reason why we're here is to remember the power of imagination and discovery. So we're doing all this because it's a human endeavor. So I thought it was nice to remember this, and also because it's an evidence of the fact that this is a long endeavor. Gravitational waves were theorized by Albert Einstein, so hence the name Einstein Telescope, back in 1916, so 100 years before they were detected. So it took 100 years to build, actually, the perfect instrument able, with the right sensitivity, to detect this very weak signal that comes from the very origin of the universe. And last week, we were hosted also by the French Embassy for the celebration of these 10 years of detection. And since then, we had a big push in the building also the new research infrastructure that will be the upgrade of the current one. And there are only 2 active detectors now in the world. One is in the United States, it's the LIGO detector, and the other one is in Italy, near Pisa, it's the Virgo detector. So, okay, what is about? I have just one slide just to introduce what the Einstein Telescope is. It's a big endeavor. It's a big scientific, engineering and technological endeavor. It will be an underground facility, 30 kilometers of tunnels, 200 meters underground, with the cutting-edge technologies, the most advanced technologies, with the highest sensitivity. So it will be hosted, and there will be caverns of like a building of 10 stories high. So it would be a huge, huge infrastructure underground. So there will be needed technologies, engineering, and of course, scientific requirement. It will be the largest vacuum system in the world, even larger than the CERN one. And of course, it's an opportunity. So we're talking here also about opportunities. There are, why struggle to host the Einstein telescope? Because it's an opportunity. And there will be, of course, now there are, of course, studies on the socioeconomic effect, on the socioeconomic cost-benefit analysis and everything. And they are estimating the revenues, both for the construction and the operational phase, estimating the staff that will be needed, both for the construction and then operating the infrastructure at large. So technicians, electricians, scientists, managers, everything that will be needed to run such a large infrastructure. And then, of course, maybe you know there is a competition going on. There are two and a half, actually, candidate sites. One is led by the Dutch colleagues. It's called the EMR, which is the region around Maastricht, Aachen, and Liège. So they're also competing to host the Einstein telescope. The other one is, of course, the Italian candidacy that is led by Italy, together with the support of Spain and Croatia so far. And then there is this other recent candidacy from the Saxony region in Germany, for which there are also agreement, because also there are discussion going on the final geometry of the instrument. So there's a lot of going on. But today I will focus on the synergies, and I'm happy to share with you the task, what we did in Italy to support the whole work. So not just the candidacy, but at larger, with a larger, broader scope, what we are doing to pool all the necessary resources from different sources to support the candidacy. Our, say, competitor, the EMR team, is doing something very similar, of course. I don't have the details, I'm sorry, so I will focus on what I know in the details, so what we're doing in Italy. As I said, we need facilities, because we need to build, to create, the cutting-edge technologies that are needed in different fields. So we need laboratories and facilities to develop these technologies. And to build this, we have been able to use, with, I would say, great profit, the Resilient Fund. We had huge investment, nearly 75 million euros, to build these laboratories that are now constituting a kind of distributed facility with specialized instruments and trained staff to develop the necessary key enabling technologies, spanning from optics to laser to vacuum systems, suspensions, computing facilities. So whatever is needed, we have now been able to set up this large distributed network of laboratories. And here we have been pooling resources from the participating institutions with their own funding from the Sardinia region, because the Italian candidacy is set in the Sardinia region. So the Sardinia region, which is one of the, let's say, region that benefit from structural funds, is making a great use of the structural funds, and we will see in different, with different objectives. So we're pulling national funds from the Resilient Plan, regional funds from the structural funds, and also institutional funds from the participating institutes. This is not the last version of the presentation. Okay, never mind. I will manage anyway. So it was my mistake. I sent it too late. Sorry. Okay, so for the construction, as we said, this will be a huge endeavor, and we have allocated secured funds for 1.3 billion euros if we succeed. So if Italy will be designed as the host country of at least one of the sites, so we have secured these funds. And again, this is two different sources. One is a national fund. So the largest part is called host premium to host the facility. And then we have a top-up from, again, regional funds that have been secured by the Sardinian government. For research activities, as we said, we have now the facilities, but we also need to perform the research. So to doing this, we are applying for grants that are, again, granted by different sources. So we have a national fund that is 5 million euros. So these are national funds that are, let's say, for the daily operation of the research groups in Italy. And then we have different calls for proposals that are launched both by regional funding agencies and national funding agencies to apply for grants for specific research projects with the specific objectives. And then now, of course, we apply to the usual framework program grants, like, for instance, the ERC or other funds. And this is to allow the research group to work and to continue working on their research. Yesterday, there was an interesting talk from the LIPS initiative about cooperation with industry. Of course, it's essential for us to cooperate with industry because, as I said, to develop technologies, of course, you have the engineers, the physicians that are able to define the requirements, but then you need someone that implement the requirements, that work with you to check and to test the requirements and the solutions that are proposed by the scientific side. So here, again, we have been able to implement a similar scheme that the one that was presented yesterday. So we had the possibility to present in Sardinia via these regional funds that are allocated specifically to cooperate with SMEs and industry. We've been able to present the requirements. We had public consultancies with the industrial ecosystem there. And then there was this call for ideas. The industries and the SMEs in Sardinia, they applied. And together we identified a few development fields. And now there is a proper call to fund these SMEs and industries to develop the solutions that were, let's say, co-created during this consultancy phase. And then we have from the national funds, that is actually under negotiation now, other funding specifically devoted to cooperation with industries, and in particular to set up a kind of innovation center specifically devoted to incubate spin-offs or other type of high-tech companies that will hopefully spin off from the researchers that we're doing. Okay, and who's doing this? Of course, you need staff. So we mentioned before trained staff and skilled staff. So we have been able, here again, thanks to the synergies of different funds, to hire people. So to hire people with different job positions. So we have the so-called ET ambassadors, so that we have a more promotional or communication activities that were hired by the two universities in Sardinia funded by regional funds. And then we had national funds to hire technicians and engineering and scientists to perform the research activities. And that we have also funds both from European, national and regional funds to fund PhDs that are active and cooperating within the different laboratories and universities. And then we have also so-called in-kind contribution. Italy is the largest share of the international collaboration, which now counts around 2,000 people around the world. And we contribute to the international collaboration with more than 600 staff equivalent. So it's also an investment that is made by universities and research institutions in Italy. And then, of course, we have other activities such as the management of the candidacy, which is a full-day job. And then we have, again, the promotional activities, the review activities. So this, again, it's an in-kind contribution of the participating institutions. I think, yes. And then we have, I'm coming to my conclusions, we have specific funds allocated to prepare the candidacy itself, so with pre-feasibility studies, with cost-benefit analysis, and also funds that are devoted to the preparation of the site, which means renovation of streets, preparation of international schools, international hospitals, and everything that is needed to host a huge, large international community in the site. It is again in the north of Sardinia. So my conclusion, so life cycle is a multi-layer aspect. We, of course, know the S3 general life cycles, but being, a step backwards from the actual constructions, we have different, let's say, level of development. And so we are trying to follow different development phases, which is not always very straightforward anyway. S3 label is a door opener. The Einstein telescope entered the S3 roadmap in 2021. And of course, this was a huge benefit because we were able then to apply and to enter the national roadmap and to have easier access to all the funds that are set for research infrastructure. So yes, it was indeed a huge advancement. We need big money, and the big money comes not from Europe, but it comes from national and regional funds. So to build the infrastructure, you have to rely on national and regional funds. European funds are of paramount importance, but are for other purposes. Yes, the national roadmaps, I mentioned it. And of course, you need scientists, but you need also professional managers, because for Einstein telescope, it's a huge endeavor, and you need research managers, you need a research infrastructure manager that are doing this as a job. So not land for some period, but they are doing this as we're doing every day, the whole day. Yes, so this is basically everything I wanted to say today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monique. Thank you for this very, very concrete example. And what you said at the beginning, that the creation of such impressive infrastructure subject demonstrates the power of imagination and discovery. That actually perfectly applies to our today's topic, alignment of different funding instruments. That also requires power of imagination and discovery, for sure. And with that being said, we now continue with the perspective from the extreme light infrastructure. And I invite Roman Hvezda, director of the Eli Beamlines facility, who brings extensive experience in the strategic development and governance of large-scale research organizations and strong links to industry collaboration. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and also thank you to the organizers for organizing the event. I think it's quite a unique collection of people from different fields, also stakeholders, to exchange various case studies. So I think it's quite enriching. I enjoyed it. So I will follow with a case study of the extreme light infrastructure. In a concise way, sort of to motivate you and provoke your questions to engage you in the panel discussion as well. So you will hear a context of Eli with respect to the funding and funding synergies, the Eli story in the perspective of the life cycle, and also a few points on the lessons learned that that we can elaborate on in the discussion. So it has been said yesterday, a beautiful term by Jose, that ELA has a variable geometry. This is interesting term. So it's a multi-site infrastructure. It wasn't foreseen like that from the very beginning, but it evolved in that way. And it's of course in the case of the funding synergies, quite important aspect that has brought a lot of aspirations on the national level, also different funding sources, but also the necessity to complement and synergize these streams in order to maintain the research infrastructure as one research infrastructure. It's on the S3 roadmap as a project since 2006, so having 20 years on stage. Is an interesting perspective, since we still consider ELA as one of the young infrastructures in Europe. And since 2018, we are also recognized as a landmark. On the top of that, from the organizational perspective, we have established in 2021 an RICH to operate the facilities, provide the single point of access for the users, and of course also to materialize the idea of being a pan-European infrastructure, not only by the scientific ambitions and the technology advancements, but also from the organizational perspective. So you see the current membership and observership derived from the flags. On the top of that, from the beginning of April, we will have new observers from Slovakia and Montenegro, so even spanning beyond the EU borders in this respect. So 3 facilities in Czech Republic, Hungary and Romania. The 2, as you have heard also yesterday from Jose, in the Czech Republic and Hungary, are being directly organizationally integrated into the ELI RICH. And with the 3rd facility, we are having one user access mode, so the users do not need to distinct between the facilities. They have single point of access. 2 high power lasers, so not as precise maybe as the ET project, but talking about lasers as well. That enables a variety of experiments and scientific and innovations related activities, be it the compact particle accelerators, very precise imaging techniques and studies of extreme matter relevant to clean energy technologies, in particular laser-driven fusion, and also studying very fast processes on the very, very micro level. So in terms of the funding model, spanning from the beginning, from the initiation of the project to the current days, over the 20 years, I have structured that in the traditional way, though I will, on the following slide, a bit challenge some of these phases and phasing of an infrastructure. So there is no surprise that there is a preparatory phase, a construction phase, operation, and that we need to think about upgrades. Especially related to infrastructures that are very strongly dependent on technology, and technology that has a relatively short life cycle in it, and let's say the development path is very fast, which is what it makes attractive, what it may attractive also for industry and applications, but it's also a challenging from perspective of funding in these renewals. So each of the 4 phases that you see there are different in terms of the scale of funding. They are different in terms of the governance. They are different in terms of also the funding sources and scale in general, not only the funding scale, but also the engagement of stakeholders. So ELI has been supported after being listed or approved, accepted on the S3 roadmap by the framework program on a scale of about 2 million euros. Basically to define the goals, to define the technology pathways, and also to select the sites. That is always interesting endeavor. So we can also learn from that for Einstein telescope, what are the advantages of having a single site and multi-site infrastructure. There was some level of co-funding on the national level, but I think this phase has been marked with more or less single source of funding. For the construction phase, I think ELI was the first on this scale, and we are talking about 1 billion euros to use the structural funds, so that the host countries, the free host countries, made a smart decision to dedicate some part of the funding otherwise used for construction roads, bridges, and many other important public infrastructure to fund extensively also research infrastructures. And so this piloting had their great advantage that freed up basically immediately after the preparatory phase sufficient level of funding to start and more or less to lead the full scope of the construction of the physical building, development of the technology. It motivated national funding and also in a not always positive way for the host institutions, but also institutional co-funding of these endeavors. But of course, there was an aspect of that is relevant, I think, for the discussion on the side of the synergies that didn't create the necessity for an in-kind contributions as we could see from, for instance, an ESS model and other infrastructures. That means that this construction phase remained solely in the host countries. Moving to the operation in 2000, so that was time-wise preparatory phase 2007-2010, construction 2011 to 2017, so relatively short given the extent, and followed with the operation that I would split into two before establishing the multinational governance ELI-ERIC, so 2018 to 2021, when most of the funding needed for commissioning, integration, ramp up of the sources, and opening the access to the users was driven by the host countries again and institutions. And since 2021, with the scheme of member states contributions, they are covering out of the 70 to 80 million a year, about which does not include the third ELI pillar, so in total about 100 million. The host countries are covering, the member states are covering about 80% of the cost, out of which, again, about 80% is being covered by the host countries, which is being complemented by competitive grants, be it InfraDev, Infratech, and national grants, and about 5% commercial revenues. And I think that worked very well, motivated and created a stable environment to ramp up the user program. That is very successful in case of ELI, and we are having hundreds of applications every year. Over the last 2 years, we have provided every year about 100 experiments, which is I think, proving that the mission of ELI is successfully followed. Entering into the phase after 10, 12 years of operation, the necessity to look ahead 5, 10 years on the road with the upgrades of the technology and opportunities that are there, that might be specific ramp-ups of the systems, replacements, but also more substantial upgrades, as in the case of the Eli B-Mines facility being mandated last year to become a second pillar of yet another S3 infrastructure, EU Praxia, that creates the need to create again another funding model. So that comes to my point that unless there is from the very beginning a clear funding model for the and governance for the entire life cycle of the infrastructure, it's very complicated or it's complicated. Things are always complicated, but it's there is simply a clear need to synergize and find the links between the funding sources, between the funding agencies for the particular phases there. So in this upgrade, we aim to rely more and motivate more the in-kind contribution model that we didn't have during the construction phase of Eli, which is, as it's anticipated, yet another interesting aspect in the life cycle that we need to look at to switch between different funding models across all the life cycles of these phases. So in terms of the lessons, I would emphasize a few elements. First, it's really important to align the institutional model for the infrastructure. It's of course much easier to express it that way, and much harder to do that because we are entering to something that is very different to technology development or science cases and flagship experiments for given infrastructure. It's much more and more in the landscape of research infrastructure. If infrastructure is a political debate, how to establish the right governance model that would then motivate sufficiently long commitments because the life cycle is not 5, it's not 7, it's not 10 years. The outlook needs to be done with definitely at least 20 years, which is not the problem of the technology, but the problem for the funding agencies. And as it has been already stated, most of the funding for the research infrastructures is coming from the national level, and to motivate such a long-term commitment, the S3 label may not necessarily be sufficient long-term, meaning for the initial investment, it's something that usually works. If the debate comes after 10 or 20 years, people get used to the fact that the infrastructure is on the roadmap. A subset of this topic is like long-term planning and long-term engagement of the governance in terms, and what the infrastructure can do is simply to predict sufficiently in advance the model for the operational maintenance of the infrastructure, and have at least mid to long-term discussion with the governance regarding the funding that helps tremendously to start to think about synergies. So to understand what a pan-European infrastructure has as a baseline, has a basis, funding from the contributions, and what comes on the top, what may come on the top of that in the form of competitive funding based on the activity of the infrastructure itself. There are endless topics related to the combination synergies between and potential improvements between framework program and the structure funds, the way how the objectives are being set, the KPIs, how the KPI specific from the name, very similar KPIs may be interpreted very differently. So to have a single audit mechanism would be definitely very helpful, and something that could be promoted. The same is true for matching some of the excellence-based EU funding from Pillar 1 complementary to the research infrastructures, meaning specifically the ERC, that there are clearly complementarities and synergies in terms of the use of research infrastructures. The best scientists are using the research infrastructures, but that does not match with the fact how the eligibility of the ERC grants is being structured. And finally, for any research infrastructure, and is being stressed more and more to enhance the resilience and sustainability engagement of the offer for industry and commercial revenues, whatever it means, whether this is, as we have in our case, a proprietary access or identification of the role of a research infrastructure in the context of technology infrastructure. Sort of the debate from the previous panel is important because it's not that much important from the point of view of the revenues itself, but it brings tremendous leverage and motivates topping up the remaining 95%. So those were my conclusions. I'm definitely happy to follow up in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Roman, for a very detailed perspective and also practical advices and solutions provided. We move forward to our next speaker, who brings the perspective of LOFAR ERIC and the Bulgarian LOFAR station. Professor Kamen Kozarev from the Institute of Astronomy at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, and also he's leading several national and international projects and represents Bulgaria in LOFAR ERIC. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Kamen Kozarev. I'm the national coordinator of the LOFAR ERIC project, as well as the Bulgarian scientific delegate at the LOFAR ERIC. So I'd like to tell you a little bit, first of all, what is LOFAR? LOFAR is the low frequency array. It is the biggest radio telescope in the world that observes the universe at the lowest frequencies possible from the ground. It is a distributed, truly pan-European research infrastructure, and all the observing stations. It is a distributed infrastructure of 52 observing stations throughout Europe, as you can see on the map there. It is mostly condensed in the Netherlands, where it originated and started operations about 14 years ago. And baselines, that is the distances between the different observing stations, extend to more than 2,000 kilometers in Europe. The operations of the radio telescope are done centrally at the Astron, which is the Netherlands Institute for Radio Astronomy. And as I mentioned, there are stations in different countries, 52 existing and 2 stations to be built this year in Bulgaria and Italy. On the pictures in the middle, you can see, first of all, the circular core, which is the central part of the radio telescope in northern Netherlands. And then the other pictures show you what these observing stations look like. There are 2 antenna circles, one at low frequencies between 10 and 90 megahertz, the other one at higher frequencies between 110 and 250 megahertz. Now, and then on the right, you can see 2 examples of the observations that the radio telescope produces. First, the one on top is a radioactive galaxy, and then on the bottom are images of the solar corona at different frequencies between 20 and 80 megahertz. So it's a major research infrastructure. It produces huge amounts of data, several petabytes per year, and so we also have that to worry about. LOFAR has been recently or is nearing the completion of its upgrade, LOFAR 2, which cost about 20 million euro. And that includes upgrades to the computing hardware, upgrades to the central processing hardware in the Netherlands, as well as new optical connections that can actually increase the amount of data that can be sent to be processed. In general, LOFAR is an extremely valuable tool because it's very useful, not for only a very narrow topic of observation in astronomy, but it can be used over a wide variety of topics. And there are these LOFAR key science projects that span from the observations of the earliest universe, the first stars, through observations of galaxies, local galaxies, our galaxy, all the way to observing the sun and monitoring the ionosphere. It has also been used to track satellites and planes, so it has multiple uses, and it's a very flexible instrument. LOFAR used to be governed by a Dutch foundation, Stichting, with international partners to it. Since the end of 2023, we had established an ERIC, the LOFAR ERIC, in which I'm happy to report Bulgaria is a founding member, along with the Netherlands, Italy, Poland, Germany, and Ireland. And recently, we were joined by Sweden, United Kingdom, and Czechia, with France and Latvia collaborating countries. So as I mentioned, there is the LOFAR 2 upgrade, which is nearing completion. The ERIC oversees that, oversees the upgrades of all these individual observing stations in all the different countries, as well as the large observing programs, which are the plans for what the telescope will do in the next 5 years. The LOFAR is very flexible, not only in its observing targets, but also in the fact that the telescope can be used together. All stations can be used together to form a huge interferometer with the resolution of Hubble telescope, for example. So a very large professional telescope. But also each one of its observing stations can be used on its own as a separate telescope. And that is in a way, a very attractive point for establishing all these national partners joining and owning a station. All these stations are owned by the national partners in the consortium. Some of them have one, others more than that. So in particular, we have joined and with the promise of building a station in Bulgaria. LOFAR BG is part of the National Research Infrastructure Roadmap of Bulgaria, which is coordinated by the Ministry of Education and Science. And it's a project to build, operate, maintain, exploit this first professional radio telescope in Bulgaria and be part of the LOFAR network. So this is an entirely new area of research for Bulgaria, which is traditionally focused on optical astronomy. So we actually have to develop an entire ecosystem around that, not just the infrastructure, but also the human resource to maintain and exploit the data, which is a big challenge in itself. The LOFAR station will be placed in the south of Bulgaria, very close to the Rožen National Astronomical Observatory. And you can see here the current state of the field. Each station, I forgot to mention, is about as big as a football field. And on the bottom right, you can see an AI image of what the station would look like when we hopefully finished it by the end of this summer. So there are numerous benefits to having being part of such a an endeavor, such a research infrastructure as a whole, unique advantages not only for science but also for technology and education. First of all, we will be participating in one of the most advanced radio telescope collaborations in the world, which will bring significant benefits in science, know-how education for Bulgarian scientists. We hope to establish ourselves as a regional leader in low-frequency radio astronomy for the next 10 years at least. We have already started collaborations with world experts in the field, intake of know-how, knowledge transfer capabilities, and we have started training, development of young scientists and engineers, and hope to continue this from astrophysics through to radio communications technology and ICT. And I will talk about the additional synergies now that we are experiencing. One of them is a synergy through a Horizon 2020 project that we coordinated at the Institute of Astronomy between 2020 and 2023. It was a little bit difficult due to the COVID pandemic, but nevertheless, we managed to achieve our objectives, which are to transfer knowledge and capacity from Astron, the leading institution in radio astronomy in Europe, and the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies to our two collaborative institutions, us and the Technical University of Sofia, by means of a number of trainings and staff visits to expand the research potential in our field, which is solar and heliophysics, by interfacing and talking and collaborating with the experts from these two institutions. One of the reasons that we collaborate with DIAS is that they also have significant experience of owning and operating a single station, so that was a lot of know-how that we were able to obtain from this. And of course, we also developed educational curricula and courses and training exercises for the Bulgarian scientists. So that was a very useful work. Is that, sorry. Maybe that's the end. Okay, that's the old version. Anyway, so some more, something on my last slide that I wanted to mention was the synergy in terms of funding, not just for transferring know-how, not just for building the infrastructure, but also funding for development of human resources. During this period, we were also able to execute starting an ERC, a nationally funded project, which is very similar to ERC starting grants, to attract young researchers to develop their science and learn and start to do radio astronomy, because as I said, this is basically the seed of the future development that we are doing right now, and it's very important to be continuously supported for the establishment of a relatively mature field in Bulgaria. One final thing I wanted to mention is the synergy with other projects, other infrastructures from the national roadmap. We have already started collaborations, very fruitful ones, with the Discover petascale supercomputer. So it's also part of EuroHPC, and we have very successfully worked together to process LOFAR observations. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you all for all panelists for this complementary perspectives. And I'm sure we have questions. We can open the floor to your questions. We have heard many cross-cutting issues. Yes, we see several hands. Yeah, please wait for the mic and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I like to tell that as I've heard from professor from Bulgaria, you mentioned several times connection between science and education, which is, by my modest opinion, very important. And my direct question is related to the plan of your RICH consortium that you are planning to establish some spin-off or startups. And is it just a plan, or you're going on that realization? And the second part of the same question is, are you considering a connection and cooperation with some existing industry companies in your country? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on the national level, I was discussing what we're planning, and I mean, so far it's more of a vision, since we still haven't completed the main part of the infrastructure, which is the station itself. The LOFAR stations are all the same, so this is technology that has already been developed. But we are already discussing other technological developments around the LOFAR technology. Hardware development that's related to other types of smaller scale observing facilities, and software developments for pipelines for processing, analyzing data, AI software for valorization, decimation of unnecessary data. As I said, there are significant amounts of data are produced by the radio telescope, and this has to be analyzed automatically. So we are still in the beginning of this work, and but we're slowly gathering speed. We are very fortunate to collaborate with the Technical University of Sofia, where they have a very strong group expert in antennas for radio communication in general. So we are working on this. On the education front for the Stellar project, we developed very specific targeted courses on radio communications and radio astronomy, including with LOFAR, and there are plans now to establish PhD level courses on radio astronomy, as well as plans to establish a master's program among several universities in Bulgaria.
Thank you. Do we have more hands and more questions? Yes. Here in the first row.
Thank you. Now the question would be, I'm not sure about Einstein telescope, but more for ELI. This is because of my limited knowledge. More for ELI and LOFAR. There are discussions regarding the next framework program to have better synergies between Horizon and the Defense Fund. And also the fact that research infrastructures are, in some cases, by some member states, invited to consider applying also for this kind of calls. Do you see this as a threat or as an opportunity?
So from the perspective of ELI, developing and operating high-power lasers that are by the legislation dual-use technology sitting in the experimental halls, the question is more the purpose, how they are being used. There are countries that does not allow to do even specific basic science experiments that would probably be a bit a challenge on our end, how to address that if they are like either members of ELI RICH or their scientists would apply for a beam time. But otherwise, I see that as a complementarity to the activities we are doing. We will not change. Again, talking about the case of ELI, the infrastructure from being an experimental facility. So the defense funding doesn't necessarily mean to develop weapons. There is a lot of things that can be applied already from the current investigations, talking about material hardiness. It can be as good for space applications to understand what the semiconductors are doing when they're being exposed by that or other radiation, or whether the same material is being exposed by that radiation on the Earth. This is still the same science, the same aspects of investigations, and if there will be a clear synergy between the funding and especially the scope, I would consider that not necessarily as any threat, but rather an opportunity.
Thank you. Do we have more questions and more hands? If not at the moment, I have a question for all the panelists, and this was also sent in by participants. It was the most popular question. In your point of view, to this day, what remains a single biggest barrier to truly combining funding instruments across the research infrastructure's life cycle? And in case this is the last question, because we are close to the time, so not to end up on the negative note, if we are identifying barriers, what would be solutions from your point of view to overcome those barriers? Elena, let's start with you.
Well, as you have understood, when we prepared our report on funding, it was already a big challenge, because the funding sources are absolutely diverse and not always evident. So I think this is one of the biggest barriers, this synergy of sources, which are not always clear, even at the level of the research infrastructures. How to overcome this barrier? Well, we need goodwill, actually, as usual. As soon as you have goodwill and as soon as you strive for overcoming this, then it can happen. Well, I can even give you an example where it really worked in France. For example, we managed it. We did a full cost analysis of funding of research infrastructures. It was a big effort. It was in the beginning, everybody said it's impossible, because you have so many actors who even couldn't say, well, I don't know how I separate this research infrastructures funding from laboratory funding, how I can divide one person who is doing research and infrastructure services and so on. It's difficult. It's not evident, but as soon as you wish it, you can do it.
If there is a will, there's a way, right? Exactly. Thank you, Monique.
Well, I think I can only echo what Elena was just saying. Okay, apart from the administrative procedures, I'm not talking about that. Okay, I think you need time to really understand the ecosystem, the needs, and what you need. You need time, and you need people that are able to do this. From my perspective, we spent a lot of time talking with people, starting from the local communities that had needs for streets, for hospital, as I said, for basic infrastructures. So they were asking us, why do we spend such amount of money for a research infrastructure and not for our children to have a better way to go to schools every day? And we said, but we can do it both together. So you need to plan together, you need time, you need to speak with people, and then you speak with policymakers, funding agencies. Yeah, I think you need time. You need time and find the right people to talk to, and eventually understand which is the win-win situation, and give it a value. So I think.
Yeah, please, Raman.
So you ask about the single point that.
If you had to choose one, because of the limited time, choose one from hundreds of them.
I'm trying to reformulate it in a way that the stakeholders that are providing the funding are having different missions, right? The Commission has different mission. The national level, the states are having different mission, as well as the region. And ESFRI is not a funding agency. Right? So that can provide a guidance in a way. This is an interesting topic to be developed. This is more or less what is the objective. So we can't be surprised by the fact that in different phases and overall there is like a mismatch that we may try to synergize, to find the links, but this is the role of the research infrastructure. If you want to build one and operate one, it's just your daily business. What would help from my perspective is that there is an actor, probably the Commission, that a bit better orchestrates this landscape in a way, providing templates, providing case studies, models where it works, so that every single funding agency in the EU does not need to invent it by themselves and try to harmonize it gradually, at least.
Thank you. Professor Kosarev?
Yeah, so in my opinion, what is needed is more discussions about what is needed, because as coordinators of research infrastructures, we are also learning as we're planning and building, and sometimes the requirements may change on the one hand. On the other hand, what is possible to do with different type of funding, because very often we have in our heads reading the description of the funding, you know, what can be covered, but it may turn out that it's more flexible, that you can cover other things, infrastructure surrounding the research infrastructure itself, or other types of funding which are necessary. You know, my colleague was talking about bridge funding and all these things. You know, sometimes it is possible. So I think better and more discussions with funders.
Thank you. Thank you to all panelists for today's discussion, and echoing what Roman just said, we are looking forward to be on the same mission towards coherent and sustainable RIs in our ecosystem. Thank you once again, and let's move forward to the remaining program. Thank you.
Well, we have reached the end of the symposium, and we are really happy to have Patricia Postigo with us today. She's supposed to be online, so let's see if we have her here. Okay. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, I am online.
Thank you for being here with us today. She's going to give the closure speech. And well, Patricia Postigo joined the European Commission's Directorate General for Research in 2004. And nowadays she works at the European Commission's Research Infrastructure Program since 2016. And there she's in charge of international collaboration and other files, including interaction with industry and relations with CERN. Thank you, Patricia. The floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. I feel very strange. I realize you see my face in a big screen as if I was a character from Star Wars. So I'm sorry about that. I also seem to have landed from outer space in your meeting, but I have gone through each one of the presentations made at the meeting over this past couple of days. So I hope that I have in my mind an idea of what you have been discussing. And I just wanted to, a lot of different topics have been touched upon, and I wanted to wrap up with a reminder of the transition the infra program is going through, to make sure that everybody in the room understands and shares the same type of understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and trying to link that transition in the program to the topics that you have been discussing. So I'm going to open my presentation now. You don't see my slide, right? Do you see my slides now? Sorry, I cannot hear anything. Could anybody confirm?
No, we can't see your presentation.
You
Let's see.
cannot?
No, we can't. So let's see.
Hmm.
We are talking to the technician people, and let's see if
it worked.
it works. You know, we have always this kind of problems.
Yeah, you should know that we
technical
tested
issues.
it all. Yeah, we tested it to make sure it worked. But then something always happens. But then perhaps I don't even need the slides. And I can just tell you, because it was just two very simple lists of things that I wanted to tell you about. So I will just put it here like a cheat sheet and continue without the slides. I really don't need them. So the program is going through a transition, but there's an element of continuity. And the continuity is this is still a program that will be serving a road mapping process driven by ESFRI that is community-based and that is focused on transnational access and joint technology collaboration. So this remains the focus of the program. But there is a transition in how we want to support those activities. So we want to move from a mostly grant-based approach to a method of funding transnational access that is long-term and that has no gap periods for communities. I will say more about that later, but in terms of how we will start deploying this transition, we will have a call for pilot projects now in the next work program. And we also want to move to a longer term scheme on how European laboratories work together on joint technology development. Along the same lines of the TNA idea, we want a scheme that has a term as long as the framework program so that communities can work together without gap years. But again, we designing this new way of doing things with an element of continuity, because we are signing now in the next months contracts with different consortia of research infrastructures for them to organize the thinking of how best we can make this happen in the next 2 years before FP10. And another evolution is that we are trying to increase how we reach out to industrial users, because the program now is going to include technology infrastructures, which are delivering services at a higher technology readiness level and in principle attract users that are closer to the market. So this is a little bit the big lines of the change and the element of continuity. What these changes mean is that we will have a transnational access scheme. That doesn't mean that we will not have grants anymore. A part of a program will still fund grants, but a significant part of a program will be financing a transnational access scheme. And that means that traditional forms of access, access that is not created by the grant, access that predates the grant, is something that can be placed in a common scheme or program or pot. We will choose the word we want to use when we are done with the joint thinking about it, so that users in Europe who want to use, be it a laser or a synchrotron or a neutron laboratory, they don't need to know there is an ongoing grant. They don't need to worry about the deadlines for calls. They have a very transparent and accessible portal for accessing all instruments in Europe. That's the idea driving it. And of course, I know that now a lot of ideas are racing through your minds and a lot of problems are being formulated. This cannot be done for this or this reason. So what we've launched through the grant we are signing now, we want to create the appropriate environments, workshops, surveys, so that you can all express your thoughts on whether this can be done and which is the best way of doing it. And we want to do the same thing with technology development. We are a little bit inspired by what Eurofusion has been doing over the past decades. Why cannot we bring together the communities developing RI technologies in a way that is not project-based, that provides a more stable environment to work together on technology? And if the environment is longer term, it's easier for SMEs to get involved. There's less risk. there are no gap years, and it's easy as well to become closer to industry, picking up on the results and doing spin-offs of scientific technologies. And now I want to say two things about reaching out to industrial users. And I know that a lot of people in the room are already engaged in these discussions for a long time, longer than me. Hello to all those of you that we know each other very well. And when it comes to attracting industrial users that are outside the usual suspects that use developed analytical laboratories, like, for example, the pharmaceutical industry, when it comes to reaching out to new industrial user communities, the main problem, we believe, is not one of cost, but one of a shared understanding of what the techniques can do for the bottom line, and a problem of diverging academic and industrial cultures. We will need to find ways to bridge that gap in FP10, and we're hoping that the incorporation into our program of technology infrastructures, which come with more stable user communities in the private sector, will make this a little bit easier and will align, so to speak, the different players on one same pitch so that we can improve the collaboration and the transversal synergies. So just to close the gap with what has been the topic of your discussion these 2 days, we think that these schemes that will be more transparent, longer term, always open, will make it easier for RI services to be identified by thematic research projects, and will make it easier for our communities to be more integrated in what is driving the agenda in thematic programs. We're hoping this will be the case, and that this will improve synergies with other parts of the framework program and with partnerships. We believe transparency and ensuring the understanding of other players in the scientific landscape is key to improve our synergies. And we're hoping, although we still don't know very well how technology infrastructures will be brought into the picture, and perhaps this is one of the big debates ahead of FP10, we're hoping that this will help us make RI services more understood across thematic programs, and the benefits of their services will be maximized. And I think this is all I want to say today. I'm going to close my cheat sheet. I don't see any of you now because I only see myself on the screen. Now I see myself on the screen, and I hope that was useful to you. Thank you very much for having me, if only electronically. And you know where to find us for any questions in this 2-year transitional period that I hope will be interesting and exciting for all of us.
Thank you, Patricia. Well, this is the end of the symposium. We want to thank you all. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you to all the participants, the ones that are online, the ones that are here on site. We hope we have enjoyed the symposium during these 2 days. And just to let you know that we will start working in the 3rd edition. It will be in 2028. So we hope to see you there also. And now we can move to the lunch together. And this is the end. Thank you.